he professed his love for his queen, and he was quite beside himself with grief when she gave herself to another. This is a short selection of the letters he wrote during those days, just after. He wrote to Walter Savage Landor. Society is unhinged here by Her Majesty's marriage, and I am sorry to add that I have fallen hopelessly in love with the Queen, and wander up and down with vague and dismal thoughts of running away to some uninhabited island with a maid of honour, to be entrapped by conspiracy for that purpose. Can you suggest any particular person serving in such a capacity who would suit me? Is it too much, perhaps, to ask you to join a band of noble youths, Forster is in it and Maclise, who are to assist me in this great exercise? But a man of your energy would be invaluable. I do have my eye upon a lady, principally because she is very beautiful and has no strong brothers. Upon this and other points of the scheme, however, we will confer more at large when we meet, and meanwhile burn this document, that no suspicion may arise or rumour get abroad. And to his friend, John Forster, I am utterly lost in misery and can do nothing. I have been reading all over Pickwick and Nickleby to get my thoughts together for the new effort, but all in vain. My heart is in Windsor, my heart isn't here, my heart is at Windsor, a-following my dear. I saw the responsibilities this morning and I burst into tears. The presence of my wife aggravates me. I loathe my parents, I detest my house. I begin to have thoughts of the Serpentine, of the Regent's Canal, of the razors upstairs, of the chemist down the street, of poisoning myself, of hanging myself upon the pear tree in the garden, of abstaining from food and starving myself to death, of being bled for my cold and tearing off the bandages, or of falling under the feet of cab horses in the New Road, of murdering Chapman and Hall and becoming great in story. She must hear something of me then. Perhaps sign the warrant. Or is that a fable? Of turning Chartist, of heading some bloody assault upon the palace and saving her by my single hand, of being anything but what I have been and doing anything but what I have done. Your distracted friend, Charles Dickens. And another friend, Low, for speaking so much bliss and happiness that I, your humble servant, lay down in the mud at the top of the long walk and refused all comfort. To the immeasurable astonishment of a few straggling passengers who had survived the drunkenness of the previous night. After perpetrating sundry other extravagances, we returned home at midnight in a post-chaise, and now we wear our marriage medals next our hearts and go about with pockets full of portraits which we weep over in secret. Forster was with us at Windsor, and for the joke's sake counterfeits a passion too, but he does not love her. Don't mention this unhappy attachment. I'm very wretched and think of leaving home. My wife makes me miserable, and when I hear the voices of my infant children, I burst into tears. I fear it is too late to ask you to take this house now that you've made such arrangements of comfort in Pall Mall, but if you will, you shall have it very cheap. The furniture at a low valuation. Money not being so much an object as escaping from the family. For God's sake, turn this matter over in your mind, and please to ask Captain Kincaid what he asks, his lowest terms, in short, for ready money, for that post of gentleman at arms. You see, I must be near her, and I see no better way than that, for the present. I know you don't like trouble, but I have ventured, notwithstanding, to make you an executor of my will. There won't be a great deal to do, as there is no money, but there is a little bequest having reference to her, which you might like to execute. I have heard on the Lord Chamberlain's authority that she reads my books and is very fond of them. I think she will be sorry when I'm gone. I should wish to be embalmed, and to be kept, if practicable, at the top of the triumphal arch at Buckingham Palace, when she is in town, and on the northeast turrets of the Round Tower when she is at Windsor. From your distracted and blighted friend, Charles Dickens. So, quite a reasonable reaction to the wedding. After that, The decade moved on, rushed on, and Charles Dickens found more and more fame as each successive book was more popular than the last. And he wrote about the downtrodden, against the wealth and power of the establishment, which was, of course, represented by the monarchy. He would write of revolution in France and the creation of a new republic. In the palace, meanwhile, the Queen and her young husband also strived for reform, with the Great Exhibition of 1851 attempting to showcase the ingenuity and the might of the British Empire. Incidentally, Dickens thought the whole exhibition was a complete waste of time and money and didn't approve it all, thought it was all rather silly. Maybe he was still harbouring resentment against the young prince. Another 20 years, we get to 1870. Prince Albert was dead, and the Queen had retreated into her permanent state of mourning. Dickens had risen to ever greater heights of popularity, not only with his novels, but with his public readings. There had been a brief scandal when he separated from his wife Catherine, and there was talk, of a mistress. So these two great figures of the age, shining stars in an age of enlightenment and progress, of pride and achievement. And yet, until March 1870, just 3 months before Dickens died, they had never formally met. But at Buckingham Palace, at 6:30 on the 9th of March, Mr. Arthur Helps, who was the clerk of the Privy Council, presented the commoner to the monarch. Your Majesty, it is inconceivable that today you and I are meeting for the first time. Let me see. I came to the throne in 1837. I was 18. What year did the Pickwick Papers propel you to fame? 1836. I was 24. And yet, March 1870. I have admired your talent from the very beginning, Mr. Dickens. Thank you for accepting to be my guest today. I am proud and happy to wait upon your Majesty. You have my permission to sit. I adhere to protocol, ma'am. I would prefer standing. Oh, but you must know, Thomas Carlyle was seated throughout his entire interview. Yes, but he is a Scot. A fine historian, a brilliant essayist, but we in England, well, you are my sovereign, and I will stand. So even though he was racked in pain from gout, he remained standing, leaning against a chair throughout the entire interview, and the Queen, following his lead, remained standing also. It is a surprise indeed that we have never met before, although I believe that there have been opportunities. Now this is certainly true, but it seems as if Charles had gone out his way to avoid the monarch over the years. Back in 1856, Charles Dickens had staged an amateur theatrical performance of a new play at his own home in Tavistock House in London. Now, the performance had been such a huge success that Dickens was looking for an opportunity to repeat it. And he was delighted and overjoyed when a friend and fellow author, Douglas Gerald, suddenly died. This meant he had the opportunity to revive the show in order to raise money for Gerald's apparently impoverished family, who incidentally pleaded with him not to make them objects of charity. But Dickens announced that he would revive The Frozen Deep, written by Wilkie Collins, at the Gallery of Illustration in Regent Street. In an effort to raise more funds, Dickens decided to write to the palace and ask for a financial patronage. The reply came back to him that it was, of course, impossible for the Queen to support the enterprise financially, as it would set a precedent, but that she so very much wants to see Mr. Collins' play. I would like you all to attend the palace to perform it for my family and me. Charles Dickens, the production's producer, director, and star immediately informed the palace that it is impossible to attend, Your Majesty. Our play is a mere amateur piece. My daughters act in it. I could not permit them to appear before you in the guise of mere actresses. And besides, the scenery, the lighting, it's already built, and I could never bring it to the palace. No, it cannot be. Well, for a few days, correspondence flew back and forward until Charles Dickens eventually relented and agreed to stage a command performance for the Queen on the day before the actual fundraiser. However, it would be at the Gallery of Illustration in Regent Street. The Queen would come to him, and his daughters remained in the cast. The play was a huge success, and Dickens captured the pathos of the final scene of self-sacrifice absolutely perfectly. And after the applause had died away, the Queen requested that Mr. Dickens be presented to her so that she could congratulate him. Or, as he described it, my gracious sovereign was so pleased that she sent round begging me to go and see her and accept her thanks. But he refused. I replied that I was still in my farce dress and must beg to be excused. Whereupon she sent again, saying that the dress could not be as ridiculous as all that. And repeating the request, I sent my duty in reply, but again hoped Her Majesty would have the kindness to excuse my presenting myself in a costume and appearance that were not my own. I was mighty glad to think when I woke this morning that I had carried that point. And so it was that the monarch departed in disappointment. Although that night she recorded in her journal that at 9 we went with dear uncle, our other guests and 4 eldest children to the Gallery of Illustration to see an amateur performance of a play, a romantic melodrama in 3 acts by Wilkie Collins called The Frozen Deep, a tale of the Northern Arctic expedition, most interesting, intensely dramatic, and most touching and moving at the end. The play was admirably acted by Charles Dickens, whose representation of Richard Wardour was beyond all praise and not to be surpassed. His 3 daughters and son, Mark Lemon, the author, etc. It was charming scenery, an almost constant accompaniment of music, which adds so much to the effect of a melodrama. We were all kept in breathless suspense and much impressed. And she wrote to Charles Dickens, without any hint of the extraordinary snub of the day before, but rather congratulating him in, as Dickens wrote, the most unofficial and uncourtly manner. I wonder what on earth she said. Back to 1870. I regret that I have never heard readings from your books. I understand they were very well received in America. Now, here's another little dig from the Queen. She had heard so much about the dramatic readings that Dickens gave that she had personally written to him, inviting him to the palace to read for her. Again, he snubbed her. He wrote, I do not perform for individuals. You must become part of a general audience. Do you know, it's always been a source of confusion to me as to exactly why Charles Dickens was never offered a knighthood. Some quirk of royal protocol somewhere. Dickens simply replied, thank you. I have given a few performances since returning from America. The readings are a thing of the past. Over. Now, even that wasn't strictly true, for his final farewell readings would come to a close in less than a week, but still a few were about to happen. Your trip to America. I wanted to hear all about it. More interesting grounds, this. For although this time he just returned from a lucrative reading tour to America, his first trip back in 1842 was born out of curiosity. He wished to discover what he called the Republic of my imagination. Imagine, 66 years after the Declaration of Independence, Dickens was anxious to discover how a new republic worked. And now, here he was, talking to the granddaughter of George III, who had lost America. I know, I've seen Hamilton, I know what happened. They were heading into troubled waters here, and needed to navigate clear of them. It was the Queen who came to the rescue. Oh, the parcel that you are carrying, would they be the photographs of the Civil War I asked to see? Yes, ma'am. But they are extremely graphic. Are you sure? Of course. Wonderful. But you are right, they are graphic. How did one manage picture taking during an ordeal of battle? I had the good fortune, ma'am, to speak with Matthew Brady, a New York photographer who covered the war. He said a photographer would, how did he put it, come careening onto the scene in his lurching wagon, unlimber a camera the size of an orange crate, and beg soldiers to freeze in their tracks. Then, his picture taken, he would rush into the back of the wagon and develop his glass plate before the photographs faded forever. The expressions, the devastation, recorded forever. Destruction is still evident in many places now. You meant President Johnson. Andrew, is it not? Yes, ma'am. He attended one of my readings and was very gracious. Well, he's more fortunate than me. I have been told that there was a movement to impeach him. There was. The articles were passed during my trip. I was in Boston and the talk was of nothing else. The position of president is certainly a precarious one. Yes, I was instructed that I would one day be queen. I felt reasonably prepared when the time came. But to be thrust into power following the assassination of such a president as Mr. Lincoln, a country in chaos, it must have been overwhelming. I was told that Mr. Lincoln had a premonition of his own death. It is said that in a dream he heard the subdued sobs of mourners and saw a corpse lying on a catafalque in the White House East Room. In the dream, Lincoln asked a soldier standing guard, "Who is dead in the White House?" To which the soldier replied, "The president. He was killed by an assassin." And only 10 days later, Mr. Wilkes Booth shot Mr. Lincoln in the theatre. How did you find them? An American friend is by nature frank, brave, cordial, hospitable, and affectionate. But some I met were, how may I say it? Strange. There is a strangeness to many there. And the readings, they were well received. They clamoured for me. They queued for me. The tickets were sold and resold. I seemed to line the pockets of the touts. And yet you... What did you discover about their nation? Are conditions there as here? Are you compelled to write of the chasm between rich and poor as you have at home? I regret that time will not permit me to write such words. I have so little left and so much still to do. But you have done more for your country, a true servant and champion of the downtrodden. I found Oliver Twist excessively interesting. Lord Melbourne found them too descriptive of low life. He didn't like all of those murders. Many still think that way. I have had a measure of success reading of Nancy's murder from Oliver Twist. But the gentlemen of the press did not approve. I remember precisely what they wrote. The recital was terribly impressive, but some of the ladies in the stalls were obviously shocked. I don't think Mr. Dickens will repeat the experiment. The story is very ghastly, and there is no useful moral in it. And another one now. Mr. Dickens is a great reader, but he is much more gracious in the rendering of other passages than the murder episode from the least worthy of his books. In the hands of a less accomplished and gifted reader, the rendering would be disgusting.
The least worthy of your books? I do not agree. The division of the classes is a matter that needs addressing, Mr. Dickens, and you have been a subject who has done more to that end than any other.
Oh, ma'am, I pray that change will come in time. But I fear the wait may be a long one. For a while, the conversation dwelled on this matter, and the two discussed the difficulty of engaging efficient servants in England, as well as pondering on the price of provisions such as butcher's meat and bread.
Mr. Dickens, before you leave, I wish to make a presentation to you, offer you a gift, a personal gift, not an honour. For maybe a Republican such as you, it is all right, I understand, would feel uneasy at such treatment. So let me give you this, a copy of my book, Leaves from the Journal of Our Life in the Highlands. Perhaps you know it. I feel somewhat ashamed that the humblest of writers should offer it to one of the greatest. I am lost for words. I have no vocabulary to describe my feelings and emotions at this moment. Charles Dickens was in a rather awkward position, for he knew the book very well. When his editor, Henry Wills, had published a review of it in the magazine All the Year Round, which Dickens owned, the author was incandescent with rage, writing, "But I would not have had that reference made to the Queen's preposterous book, I have read it, for any money. I blush to join in the shame-lick-spittle chorus. It is amazing to me, knowing my opinions on such matters, that you could have passed it." He was also placed in a rather difficult position because he had no presentation to make in return. The great mind whirred, and suddenly an idea came to him. "Now, I would like to present you with a gift too. It is something that no one else in the country can possess." "Oh?" "Well, if I may be so humble, is it possible that you will be reading my latest offering, The Mystery of Edwin Drood?" "Indeed I shall. It is your first novel for 5 years, and I, like many, I'm sure, am excited." "Now, as the title suggests, it is a mystery at its heart. There will be a murder, yes, another murder, and the solution to the plot will remain shrouded until the final part is published. Now, I would like to present you with the solution. You alone will understand the fate of Edwin Drood." "I'm truly honoured. But no, I wish to read it with my subjects, to feel the story unfold in its own time, at its own speed." The one person who could have told us what happened at the end of Edwin Drood. Turned it down. Then, I ask you if you will accept bound copies of all my works for the Royal Library. I will truly treasure them. When Dickens left, both parties sat down and wrote. In her journal, the Queen recorded that he is very agreeable with a pleasant voice and manner. He talked of his latest works, of America, the strangeness of the people there, of the division of classes in England, which he hoped would get better in time. He felt that it would come gradually. Whilst the great wordsmith of the age pulled out a sheet of notepaper and addressed a letter to Frederick Chapman, a partner in the publishing house of Chapman and Hall. He wrote rather rapidly and in a slight panic. I want the best copy of all my books, bound by Heyday for a special purpose, in red morocco with gold and gilt edges, but I want it with as little delay as is constant with the best workmanship. Please have it put in hand at once. On the 26th of March, Dickens wrote to the Palace saying that the binder reports to me that he wants another fortnight for the completion of the set of my books, which I have entrusted to him to bind for the Queen. Of course, he must have it, or he will forever believe that I spoiled his work by driving him. The binder obviously was very proud of his craft, for it was 2 months more passed until Arthur Helps, from the Palace, wrote a letter from Balmoral to confirm that the volumes had been delivered and had arrived at the royal household. That letter from Arthur Helps was dated June the 9th, 1870, the very day on which Charles Dickens died. He had wished to be buried in or around Rochester Cathedral or one of the parish churchyards, but the nation decreed that he should be interred at Poets' Corner in Westminster Abbey. In Balmoral, the Queen quietly mourned and wrote that he is a very great loss. He had a large, loving mind and the strongest sympathy with the poorer classes. He felt sure that a better feeling and much greater union of classes would take place in time. And I pray earnestly that it may. The commoner had taken his leave of his wife.
Thank you very much. And a lot of the script was based on a play that was written in America by an actress by the name also portrayed Queen Victoria at many, many events and festivals in America. And she had a long correspondence with Dad about the writing of it. So she would write it and he'd say, that wouldn't happen in England, or that's not how etiquette demanded. So they sort of wrote this play with transatlantic letter writing, and eventually would you leave with taxes. And there's a copy of her play and the description of how she wrote it actually in one of the books in the other room. So thank you ever so much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Enjoy high tea if you are taking high tea. Dinner tonight, and then I will see you again when I'm performing the life and adventures of Nicholas. So enjoy that.